So, does the future need us? Well, not to sound too draconian or even nihilistic, the thing that we have to understand is we've played a role through the Industrial Revolution and then the technological revolution, where we now have a real sense of control over our environment, and we are making ourselves, let's say, unnecessary as a result. And so the thing to think about is we have this astounding technology, and that astounding technology has kind of led us in the last couple hundred years to a position where we're entering a downward spiral, potentially. And so has technology really led us somewhere, and essentially, does the future need us, right? And so the thing that we know is that it enables brilliance and rule breaking, right? But does it really matter? And of course, we think about all the things that distract us, whether it's TikTok videos or whether it's YouTube or whether it's whatever. But the thing is that there's so many critical and important things that we can develop. We can make life so much better, as we know that the kind of lower middle class person in the United States lives a better life than the richest person in the world did in 1850, right? So obviously there's some great benefits that all this development in science and technology and innovation, it's created for us. But is it also the seeds for our own destruction, right? So the one thing about innovation and where we get real scientific breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, it is a willingness to be wrong, a willingness to lose, as it were, right? So all the great innovations came from people wondering if they were doing the right thing, right? Questioning existing knowledge. And when one questions consensus thinking, well, that creates many troubling issues because, first of all, consensus thinking is consensus thinking for a reason, right? People assume it's correct. But a real breakthrough means someone is honestly willing to look foolish, right? So one of the challenges that we see today is people think that there's a straight line between a direction and a need and then the innovation that follows, right? So what I say is, we have a wish that, let's say, will address climate change in some way. So we create a law, let's say in the state of California, that says, well, we're not going to sell new gas-powered vehicles beginning in 2035 or whatever it is. So everyone's going to have an electric vehicle. Well, there are several things wrong with that. One is that while we recognize the critical issue, dictating a solution and then defining what success will be is just that, limiting what we can do, limiting real innovation, and it may not be the best solution. In fact, a simple calculation shows it's far from the best solution because it's a new electric vehicle is hardly a green thing, right? It's not green. It has to be manufactured. There's international shipping. There's sourcing of supplies. There's a lot of things that go on. There's the toxicity of a limited life battery. All of these things, including an electrical grid that needs to stress in order to charge those vehicles. And so this is not ideal. It may be a transitional phase, but we're not allowing other technologies to bloom because we're limiting it, right? So hydrogen may be a solution. It may be a better solution. In fact, if it works, it is a better solution. But how to think about what other alternatives there really can be. And this is the challenge. So guided innovation, there's a great story when they were coming up with the polio vaccine, right? One of the things that happened is government allowed for independent research, independent pursuits, independent science, right? And the comment was made that if the government had actually overseen that research, we would have had the world's best iron lung. In other words, we understood the technology we had, so let's just make it better, right? That's a fundamental mistake. That's not innovation, right? That's engineering, right? It's product design, but it's not innovation. So saying, well, we have electric vehicles, they seem to be better than internal combustion engine vehicles, so let's just have those, right? It's the equivalent of saying, let's have the world's best iron lung instead of a polio vaccine. All right, so one of the things to back up is, well, what can government do, right? So we've seen this legislation that I say is very misguided. So legislation is not the answer, but what is the answer is basic research, basic discovery with no agenda or real purpose involved, right? So one of the things that came out of World War II, a massive public spending program that just looked for basic discovery, basic science. Now, of course, we were trying to create a bomb, right? But we were funding basic discovery. And then the Cold War, kind of, the fear and paranoia, right? Well, we're looking for disruption in communications. Well, we created the internet, right? And so we're looking for, other things that can essentially help because we're afraid of losing, afraid of getting behind. But the motivation aside, what it really enabled was basic research, basic discovery. You discover first, and then you look for applications. Thinking the other way around is never the most efficient way to do things, right? So we did have government largesse, which spent a lot of money for basic discovery, but that led to the ruthless competition, whether it's HP, Apple Computer, Intel, all of that came from some fundamental government research, but it was applied in a competitive environment and enabled great innovation, great advancements, and great technological breakthroughs because there was the commercial dimension and the competitive element. And that is really maybe the most potent combination for how we can make sure that the future still does need us. So in summary, you have to have a brilliance, but a willingness to be wrong. I say it's a willingness to lose, which people really have to understand. There's inefficiencies to things. Sometimes things just don't work. We should be tolerant of that. And if it's using public funds, apparently we're not tolerant of that anymore. Well, we should be, right? And I say there's inefficiency of efficiency, right? So ultimately, getting these wonderful products and these great ways to deliver those products and great innovations, those things really do start with inefficiency. We don't know the best way at first. We discover, we rediscover, we redo, we go back again. It takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of trial and error, but ultimately that's where the efficiency comes from. And it is basic discovery. More than anything, it is fundamentally basic discovery that will drive innovation. And then we don't need to know what we'll use things for first, but it's a role that government should play. Government shouldn't try to legislate or regulate what ought to happen. They should let the brilliant minds do the best discovery and then let the best things happen. So essentially, we should be tolerant of the inefficiency of efficiency. And ruthless competition, yep, that comes from having tools to work with. And government plays a role, yes. And it's very important for government to do that. And I think that's our best role. And it's not with the stroke of a pen that anything important has ever really happened.